For 12 long years, the kingdom of lived with a silence that no celebration, no festival, and no speech could erase. It was the silence left behind by a missing heir, the silence of an empty royal seat that once belonged to princess. She had vanished during a diplomatic mission near the frontier, where the borders of friendly space began to twist into unknown darkness. Her disappearance had not been a single sharp tragedy. It was a slow heartbreak that stretched across seasons and generations. Every morning for the first year, the king stood on his tower and waited for her ship to return. He watched the sky become bright, then dark, then bright again. He waited until his eyes stung and until his advisors begged him to rest. But hope was a stubborn thing. It clung to him, even when logic whispered that no one survived 12 hours in the frontier, let alone 12 days. When a full year passed, the royal banners were lowered. The act felt like a final admission that she was gone, and citizens lined the streets to watch the colors fall. People wept openly, and some of them wondered how a kingdom could continue when its star had vanished into the cold sky. But time moved forward, even if hearts refused to follow. Children grew up never meeting the princess, only hearing stories of her gentle nature and sharp intelligence. Shopkeepers mentioned her name with regret. Teachers spoke of her with longing. Travelers carried legends of a ghostly figure wandering lonely planets, stories created only because someone needed to believe she might still be breathing somewhere far away. The king continued to rule, but he did so with less fire. His speeches shortened. His hair grayed faster. At council meetings, he often paused mid-sentence, struck by memories that arrived uninvited. He once admitted to his oldest advisor, in a tired voice, "A kingdom can survive many wounds, but losing a child that cuts deeper than any war." The advisor had no answer. Then, on a quiet morning that didn't look special at all, something changed. A trader arrived at the palace gates, dusty, exhausted, and trembling with excitement. He demanded an audience with anyone who would listen. His voice cracked as he repeated the same message. "I saw her, I swear on the stars I saw her, the princess, the lost heir." At first, people laughed at him. After all, dozens of wanderers had claimed the same thing over the years, always with vague descriptions that changed whenever someone questioned them. But this man was different. His details were sharp. His voice held no uncertainty, and his eyes were wide with genuine fear and wonder. "She is alive," he insisted. "She walks the trade road wearing silver armor scraped from travel. Her hair is short, her stance strong, and she looks like a warrior who has fought too many battles. But it's her. There is no mistake." The palace guard exchanged uneasy glances. One of them finally asked, "Are you certain?" "I am," the trader said, "but there is more. She was not alone." The words rippled through the gathered crowd. He continued, "Two small humans walked beside her children, a boy and a girl. They held her hands like she was their protector. People stared, but she didn't hide them. She walked proudly, like she dared anyone to question her." Whispers erupted, spreading from the courtyard to the market streets, then into the homes of nobles and scholars. Humans were rare living mostly on far-off colonies. For a princess to return with two human children, it was a story too strange to invent. One palace servant ran to inform the king. He nearly dropped the tray he was carrying. Another soldier hurried to alert the royal advisors. Within hours, the rumor grew into something bigger than belief. People climbed rooftops, hopping to catch sight of three silhouettes approaching the city walls. Families gathered in courtyards, arguing and praying. Some doubted, some hoped, some were afraid to feel anything at all after so many years of disappointment. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a final whisper passed from mouth to mouth. "The lost heir is coming home." And for the first time in 12 years, the kingdom dared to breathe again. The sun had barely risen when the palace walls began to tremble, not from danger, but from the sound of hundreds of footsteps rushing to the gates. Soldiers hurried to their posts. Servants leaned over balconies, whispering nervously. Even noble families who rarely showed emotion stood by the windows, searching the distant road with anxious eyes. Because there, on the dusty path leading toward the royal city, three small figures had appeared. At first they were only shadows in the morning haze, but the closer they came, the more the whispers grew. The guards lifted their spears, not in threat but in disbelief. The crowd pressed forward, trying to see the truth for themselves. The woman leading the way wore armor that had clearly survived many hard years. Silver once, it was now scraped, dented, and patched in places with metal plates that didn't match. But the way she carried herself, straight spine, steady steps, calm eyes, told the world she was someone who had walked through storms and refused to fall. Her hair was shorter than anyone remembered, cut roughly as if she had used a blade meant for battle. Her shoulders were broader, her movements sharper. She no longer moved like a sheltered royal. She moved like a survivor. And then there were the two children. A human boy walked at her right side. He looked around nervously but held her hand firmly, as if her presence alone kept the world safe. His dark hair was messy, and his clothes were simple, stitched by hand. Yet his posture showed a courage too strong for someone so young. On her left was a younger human girl. She walked with small steps, clutching the woman's cloak tightly. Her eyes were wide with wonder, and her soft voice whispered questions only could hear. When guards shifted or murmured, the little girl pressed closer to her side. It was the girl's small hand tugging his cloak that moved the first guard to tears. Because no one in the kingdom had ever imagined their missing princess returning like this, weathered, changed, and carrying two children who depended on her like she was the only safe place in the universe. A senior guard stepped forward, voice trembling. "Identify yourself." The woman stopped only a few feet from the gate. She looked faded but unbroken, tired but unafraid. And when she spoke, her voice carried through the entire crowd. "I am of," she said, "daughter of king, heir to the throne." Silence fell so deep it felt like the air itself forgot to move. The guard swallowed. His helmet shifted slightly as he lowered his head. "Princess, is it truly you?" Nodded once. She didn't try to smile. She didn't wear the expression of someone returning from a simple journey. Her face held the weight of years that could not fit into words. "I have come home," she said. At that moment, the palace doors burst open and King himself rushed out. His royal robes billowed behind him, and his breath broke with every step. He had waited 12 years for this moment, 12 years of sleepless worry and unanswered prayers. When he reached her, he didn't care about the crowd. He didn't care about the soldiers watching. He simply grabbed his daughter and pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she might vanish again. My child," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I thought I lost you forever." Closed her eyes and leaned into him. For the first time in years, she let herself feel safe. "I missed home," she said quietly, "more than I can explain." The king's embrace loosened only when he noticed the two small faces peeking from behind her armor. The boy straightened politely. The girl hid again. Placed a protective hand on both their backs. "They are under my care," she said. "They come with me." The king blinked, confused and overwhelmed, but he nodded slowly. "Anyone under your protection is welcome here." The crowd erupted, not with noise but with emotion. People wept openly. Some reached out to touch the railing in front of them, grounding themselves in the reality of what they were seeing. Children pointed with wide eyes, whispering that the princess looked like a hero from an ancient tale. And as stepped through the gates with the two human children beside her, the kingdom realized something powerful. Their princess had returned, but she was no longer just their heir. She was someone stronger, someone who had crossed the darkness of the universe and come home with a family she would protect with her life. That evening, the palace halls felt quieter than usual, as if even the walls were holding their breath. Led the two children into a private chamber. The boy's dark eyes studied every corner, and the girl kept clutching his hand as if letting go might make her vanish again. Outside, the kingdom buzzed with rumors and excitement, but inside, the three of them found a fragile, trembling peace. Sat the children on a bench near the window. The sun dipped low, painting the city in gold, and for a moment she let herself breathe. "I owe you both an explanation," she said softly. Her voice shook a little, though she tried to keep it steady. The boy tilted his head. "Where were you?" he asked. His voice was polite but curious, the way children ask questions when they sense there is more truth than anyone is telling. Looked down at him, her gaze heavy with the memories she had carried alone. I was lost," she admitted. "My ship was attacked by raiders in the frontier. I survived, but I couldn't return. I had no way to reach home, and I had to learn how to survive on my own." The girl's small hand tightened around sleeve. "You were alone," she whispered. "Yes," said, "alone until I found you." Her eyes softened as she remembered the day she discovered the children. It had been on a storm-worn moon, a place abandoned and dangerous. Their colony ship had been destroyed, and they had nowhere to go. The boy tried to protect his sister, but he was barely older than the girl, and they both trembled with fear. Had been tempted to keep moving to save herself first, but something in their eyes, a spark of hope, a desperate trust, stopped her. She had knelt in the dirt and said quietly, "I will not leave you, not today, not ever." From that moment, the three of them became a family of necessity. Scavenged food, built shelters, and defended the children from those who would have harmed them. They slept in hidden tunnels, ran through abandoned markets, and crossed barren landscapes that few had dared to survive. The children learned to read the stars, to sense danger, and to trust judgment without hesitation. "But why humans?" the boy asked cautiously. "Why did you choose to save us?" Paused, her heart ached at the simplicity of his question. "Because you were there," she said. "Because you were alive. And because I realized that life is worth protecting no matter what form it takes. You needed me and I needed you. We saved each other." The girl finally looked up, her small face shining with tears she tried to hide. "We didn't want to be alone," she said, "and we didn't want you to be alone either." Drew both children close, feeling the weight of the years, the fear, the struggle. All the nights she had gone to sleep hoping they would survive another day. "You gave me purpose," she whispered. "Even when I was afraid, even when I thought I couldn't go on, thinking of you two kept me moving. You were my reason to fight." The children rested their heads against her shoulders, small hearts beating fast, still afraid of what tomorrow might bring. But for the first time, they felt a glimpse of safety, true, unshakable safety. Outside the palace, advisors and nobles debated what should be done with the children. Some worried about their human heritage. Others questioned the king, unsure if the princess had returned to claim the throne or to live among strangers. Did not care about politics that night. She only cared about the two small lives that had become her world. She whispered to them, "No matter what happens outside, inside these walls you are safe. You are family, and I will protect you." The boy and girl nodded, swallowing hard, realizing that they had traveled through fear and darkness together. Now, in the heart of a kingdom that once seemed impossible to reach, they had found a home. Looked out the window one last time before the candle burned low. The city glimmered with lights, unaware of the full story that had walked its streets today. She touched the children's heads gently, feeling the warmth of hope. Years had been lost, fear had been endured, but finally here in this quiet room, the princess and her two human children understood that they were not victims of the past. They were survivors. They were a family. And tomorrow, whatever challenges came, they would face them together. And for the first time in over a decade, felt a fragile smile tug at her lips, a smile born not of celebration, but of quiet triumph, of hearts mended by courage and love. The next morning, the palace felt alive with tension. Courtiers whispered behind folded hands. Advisors exchanged glances heavy with calculation. Even the guards walked faster, as if the air itself carried the weight of uncertainty. The princess had returned, but she had returned with 2 human children, and in the eyes of some nobles, that was more dangerous than any army. Walked through the halls with the children close to her. The boy held her right hand, the girl her left. Every step echoed like a drumbeat announcing a challenge to the world. Servants peeked around corners, unsure whether to greet the princess or avert their eyes. And when past, all arguments for tradition and protocol fell silent. She carried herself not as someone who had lost years, but as someone who had gained them through fire and hardship. Still, whispers followed her like shadows. "The heir has returned," one minister said quietly. "But with humans, can she truly rule alongside creatures from another world?" Another muttered, "She has broken the old ways. What if the citizens refuse to accept them?" Overheard none of it directly, but she felt it in the air: skepticism, fear, doubt. She did not flinch. She kept walking, every step deliberate, every gesture calm. The children noticed her poise and mirrored it instinctively, as if they had learned courage in the tunnels of an abandoned moon, and now it carried them through palace corridors. By midday, the council convened in the grand chamber, took her place at the center, flanked by the children. Noble advisors fidgeted in their seats, eyes sharp, voices sharper. "Princess," one said, his tone polite but stiff, "we welcome your return. However, these children, what is their status? Are they formally part of the royal household, or are they outsiders?" Met his gaze evenly. "They are under my protection," she said. Her voice was steady, even as her heart pounded. "Whatever decisions you make about me, they remain my responsibility. You will not separate us." The room murmured. Some nobles exchanged concerned glances. Others whispered questions that had no easy answers. Humans were rare in, often misunderstood. Many viewed them as fragile, unpredictable, or unsuitable to share royal favor. One older counselor finally spoke, his voice low and commanding. "We must consider the implications. The children may endanger the succession. The people might question the heir's judgment. We cannot allow sentiment to outweigh law." His jaw tightened, but she did not raise her voice. Instead, she crouched slightly, leaning toward the children. "You have lived under fear, under darkness, and you have survived. I will not send you back into fear because of politics. You are my family, and I will fight for you as I would fight for the kingdom." Another counselor, younger and sharper, interjected, "But princess, tradition dictates that heirs must maintain the purity of lineage. How will the people see 2 humans at your side? Will this strengthen or weaken your claim?" Stood fully upright, shoulders squared. She looked at the council, then down at the children, who met her gaze with trust and courage far beyond their years. "Strength is not determined by blood," she said. "It is measured by loyalty, love, and courage. If the council cannot see that, then perhaps it is the council that has forgotten what true leadership means." The chamber fell silent. Some counselors shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to challenge her or remain quiet. Even the most stubborn voices faltered when the boy and girl's calm, honest eyes met theirs. Did not need to say more. Her actions in the frontier, her survival through impossible odds, and the unspoken bond she shared with the children carried a weight that no argument could outweigh. She had returned from the stars, not as a princess in name only, but as a warrior, a mother, and a living example of what courage could achieve. Still, the council would vote. Some would argue, some would oppose, and some would accept silently, and knew that tomorrow everything could change. They could try to take the children from her. They could question her authority. They could test her resolve in ways she had not faced since leaving her home. But she was ready. She had faced raiders, storms, and death itself to protect these 2 small humans. If the council chose to fight her now, they would learn what it meant to challenge someone who had survived the impossible. As the meeting adjourned, led the children back to their quarters. The palace corridors seemed colder now, heavier, as though the shadows themselves carried the council's doubts. Yet the children walked confidently beside her, small hands gripping hers tightly. Their faith in her made her own resolve stronger. That night, as the city lights twinkled below, whispered to the children, "Whatever tomorrow brings, we will face it together. No one can take you from me, not even a council full of doubters." The boy and girl nodded, leaning into her warmth. And in that quiet moment, the princess understood something vital. The true battle was not in winning the council's approval, but in standing unshaken, showing the world that courage and love were far stronger than tradition or fear. And with the two human children at her side, she was ready to fight. The morning sun spilled golden light across the palace courtyard, but could feel the tension clinging to every stone and every shadow. Today, the council would vote. Their decision would decide whether the two children would remain by her side or be taken away into the cold hands of law and tradition. She could not allow that to happen, not after years of protecting them from a universe that had tried to destroy them. The children sensed it too. The boy, standing tall despite his small frame, kept his eyes fixed on, drawing courage from her steady presence. The girl clutched the hem of her cloak, her lips pressed together, but when leaned down and whispered, "We face them together," she nodded, and something in her eyes sparkled with fierce determination. The council chamber was crowded. Noblemen and women dressed in silk and silver, their expressions a mixture of curiosity, doubt, and quiet suspicion. The children walked beside as she entered, heads held high. Gasps ran through the crowd. No one had expected her to arrive with the children so confidently, so boldly. A counselor cleared his throat. "Princess, we welcome your return. However, these children," he waved toward the boy and girl, "must be considered. Their presence at the court may create confusion and instability. Tradition cannot be ignored." Stepped forward, her voice steady, ringing with authority tempered by love. "Tradition cannot erase what is right. These children are not burdens or symbols. They are living beings who survived because I chose to protect them. They are my family, and I will not abandon them to fear or cold law." A murmur passed through the chamber. The counselors expected argument, but eyes fell on the children, and she realized something. The next words did not need to come from her. The boy stepped forward. His small hand trembled, but his voice was clear. "I know some of you might think we are strangers here. We are humans from far away, but Princess saved us. She protected us when we were alone. She carried us when we had nothing. She is our family, and we want to stay with her." The chamber went silent. No one had expected the boy to speak, to declare their bond with such honesty. The girl tugged his sleeve and whispered, "Say why she matters most." He glanced at her, then nodded, taking a deep breath. "She didn't just save our lives," he said. "She taught us how to survive. She taught us to be brave. She never gave up on us. We would not be here without her." His heart swelled, a mixture of pride and relief. The counselors shifted uneasily. Some looked away. Some leaned forward, trying to mask the truth that the children's words had broken their arguments before they were spoken. One older counselor rose slowly. His voice was measured, but his eyes betrayed surprise. "You speak with courage far beyond your years," he said. "But do you understand what it means to remain here? What if danger comes? What if tradition rejects you?" The boy held his head high. "We understand, but we would rather face anything with her than be taken away from her. She is our protector. She is our home." The girl added softly, "She never left us, and we will never leave her, not even for fear." A quiet murmuring ran through the council chamber. It was no longer debate, it was awe. The children had spoken in a voice louder than politics, louder than fear, louder than tradition itself. They had shown what it meant to be brave, to choose love over custom. Took a deep breath and placed her hands on the children's heads. "You see them," she said. "They are human, yes, but they are also wise, loyal, and courageous. If I am to lead this kingdom, I will lead it with them at my side. Not because the law demands it, but because it is the right thing to do. And the right thing to do is stronger than any rule written on paper." For the first time in years, a smile touched the boy's face. The girl let go of his cloak and hugged her legs tightly, and the princess felt a warmth spread through her chest that had been missing for too long. The council voted. It was not unanimous, but the result was clear. The children would remain under his protection. The chamber erupted, not with loud shouting, but with a quiet, respectful acknowledgement of truth. The voices that had doubted them fell silent in the face of courage, loyalty, and love. That evening, as the sun set over the palace, walked with the children across the balcony. The city below was alive with murmurs of admiration and curiosity. People had begun to see that the princess had returned not only as a leader, but as someone who had chosen humanity, kindness, and courage above all else. The boy looked up at, "We did it," he said quietly. "We did it together," she corrected, pressing a gentle kiss to the top of his head. The girl smiled, letting herself rest against. "I'm glad we stayed with you," she whispered. Held them both tightly, her heart full. Years of hardship, fear, and separation had led to this moment, and she knew, with a deep certainty, that no council, no rule, and no enemy could ever take away the family they had become. Together they were stronger than anyone had imagined. Days turned into weeks, and the city of slowly began to change. Walked through the streets with the two children at her side, and wherever they went, people watched. At first, many were uncertain. Humans were rare here, and most citizens had never interacted with one. Some whispered doubts, others stared silently, unsure how to greet these small beings who had arrived with the princess herself. But the children were not afraid. The boy waved politely to merchants, and the girl handed flowers to a passing gardener, smiling shyly but brightly. Their small gestures carried something the kingdom had not seen in years: innocence, courage, and the quiet strength of someone who had survived impossible hardships. Smiled as she watched them. For 12 years she had walked through danger alone, trusting only herself. Now, with these two at her side, she felt something she had not known in a long time: a sense of belonging, not just as a princess, but as a mother and protector. The king noticed the changes as well. At breakfast one morning, he invited the children to sit beside him. The boy asked questions about the stars, and the girl listened intently as the king told stories of distant galaxies and ancient heroes. Watched them laugh, saw how the king's face softened, and felt her heart swell. The humans who had once been strangers were becoming a part of the royal family, and slowly, the people began to see them the same way. In the palace gardens, trained with her guards while the children ran through the fountains. Soldiers watched, surprised, as the boy attempted basic drills and the girl followed with unsteady steps, laughing when she stumbled. Encouraged them, reminding them that bravery was not only about fighting, it was about never giving up. The citizens, seeing this, began to understand the princess in a new light. She was not only an heir. She was someone who had faced the harshest parts of the universe and returned stronger than ever. Word spread quickly. Merchants leaving the city told travelers about the princess and the two human children who had survived unimaginable trials. Nobles from distant provinces visited, curious to see for themselves. The story that had once been whispered in doubt was now told with admiration. Had returned, yes, but she had also brought something else: a reminder of what courage, love, and loyalty could accomplish. Even the council began to change. Those who had opposed the children's presence now watched them with respect. They saw how the boy's politeness and the girl's kindness inspired loyalty among servants. They observed how the princess's actions were guided by compassion and wisdom, not ambition. Slowly, hearts that had been hardened by tradition began to soften, and walls built by suspicion started to crumble. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the palace in gold, and the children stood on the balcony, the city below shimmered with lights, and families gathered in the squares, whispering stories of the princess who had returned with humans at her side. The boy pointed to a tower in the distance. "Do you think people will tell our story someday?" he asked. Nodded. "They already are, and maybe one day they will remember that courage is stronger than fear and love is stronger than doubt." She squeezed their hands. You both helped change this kingdom just by being yourselves." The girl leaned against his side. "I'm proud of us," she said softly. Kissed the top of her head. "I am too. We survived because we never let go of each other. And now the kingdom is learning to see what we've always known, that family is not defined by blood alone, and true strength comes from loyalty, love, and the courage to protect those who matter most." That night the city glimmered under the stars. Children slept more peacefully in their beds, villagers shared smiles more freely, and even the palace walls seemed warmer, as if they too had absorbed the light that and the humans had brought. The princess had not only returned, she had returned with proof that humanity, courage, and compassion could heal even the deepest wounds. Watched the city from her balcony, the two children at her side, and felt a quiet certainty settle in her heart. They had faced danger, loss, and doubt together. Now, the kingdom was beginning to see the truth, that hope could return even after years of darkness, and that the bonds of love could change hearts stronger than any law or tradition. For the first time in a long while, let herself imagine a future filled not with fear but with light. And in that vision, the princess, the boy, and the girl stood together, united, fearless, and unstoppable. The day had finally arrived. The grand plaza was filled with people from every corner of the kingdom. Flags fluttered in the wind, and the air buzzed with excitement. Citizens lined the streets, children perched on shoulders, and merchants stopped their daily work just to watch the heir return officially to her throne. It was not just a ceremony. It was a moment the entire kingdom had waited for, hopping, praying, and dreaming for 12 long years. Stepped onto the balcony, the two human children standing firmly by her side. The boy straightened his small shoulders, trying to look as tall and brave as he felt. The girl held his hand, her small fingers curled tightly around the princess. And for the first time, she smiled without fear. The crowd below erupted in cheers, a wave of sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of the city. The king stepped forward, his robes flowing, eyes glimmering with pride and relief. "Today," he began, his voice carrying over the crowd, "our lost heir has returned. She comes not only with courage and wisdom but with a reminder of what true family means. These two children who have walked beside her through unimaginable trials are proof that love and loyalty can overcome any darkness." Watched the children as the king spoke. They had survived storms, hunger, and fear. They had trusted her with their lives, and she had protected them with everything she had. Now, standing here, they were more than survivors. They were heroes in their own right. The crowd listened, silent now, hanging on every word. The nobles who had once whispered doubts shifted uncomfortably, realizing that the princess's strength had never been in her bloodline alone. It was in her actions, in her courage, and in her heart. Raised her voice so that everyone could hear, steady and clear. "I have returned not for power, not for glory, but to stand with those who have shown me the meaning of family. These children are mine, not because the law makes them so, but because our hearts have chosen it. Together, we will protect this kingdom, and together, we will remind everyone here that love, loyalty, and courage are stronger than fear, stronger than doubt, stronger than any obstacle in the universe." The boy stepped forward, his voice ringing through the plaza. "She saved us. She never gave up on us. And now we want to stand with her as she stood with us. That is why we are here." The girl lifted her head and spoke next, her small voice soft but unwavering. "We don't want riches or titles. We just want to stay with her, because she is our family and this is our home." A wave of emotion swept through the crowd. People wept openly. Some knelt on the ground, overwhelmed by the sight of a princess who had returned not as a figure of distant royalty, but as a protector, a mother, and a symbol of hope. The king smiled, tears running down his face. He gestured to the crowd. "See what courage and love can accomplish. See what true leadership looks like. Today the heir has returned, not broken, not timid, but stronger than any of us could have imagined. And in her strength she has brought the kingdom together." Took a deep breath and held the children's hands high above her head. The boy and girl mirrored her, lifting their small arms with pride. The people cheered again, louder than before, their voices echoing through the streets into the mountains and across the river that bordered the city. In that moment, realized the truth she had carried through years of darkness. Survival was only part of life. It was love, loyalty, and the willingness to protect others that made life meaningful. These two children had taught her that, and together they had taught the kingdom. The plaza quieted as spoke one last time, her voice gentle but firm. We have faced fear and hardship together, and we will face the future together. No matter what comes, we will stand as one, family, kingdom, and heart. And in that unity, there is nothing that can defeat us. The crowd erupted in cheers once more and lowered her hands, pulling the children close. They leaned into her, small bodies pressed against her armor and cloak, their warmth filling the princess's heart. For the first time since she had vanished, felt completely whole. She had returned not only as the rightful heir, but as someone who had survived the impossible, built a family from fragments of fear and courage, and reminded an entire kingdom of the strength of love. The sun set behind the mountains, painting the city in gold and crimson. Citizens lingered in the streets, cheering and celebrating long after the ceremony ended. The children and the king stood on the balcony one last time, looking down at the people who now understood that hope could survive even the darkest years. And in the hearts of every person who had waited, a single truth became clear. The lost heir had returned. She had returned with courage, with love, and with the children who had taught the kingdom the meaning of humanity itself. Pressed her forehead against the boy, then the girl. "We are home," she whispered, and for the first time in over a decade the word felt real, not just a place but a promise, a life, and a future filled with light. The kingdom had waited for its heir, but it had found something greater, a family, unbroken and unstoppable, who would shape the future together.